Good evening and welcome to kind of a remake of Fired Up. For those of you who watch regularly, last night's show, we normally tape on Tuesday night, disappeared into electronic oblivion. It never actually made it to YouTube, and unfortunately wasn't saved on our system here. So what was on was like a 6-minute version or 6-second version of us getting ready for the show. With attorney Paula Amani and homicide detective Phil Ramos. And unfortunately, that show is gone. Hopefully you heard it on the radio. It did go out on our radio station. This show is an abbreviated version of that to replace the show that disappeared on us. Sitting in with me, this is on Wednesday night actually, is Tony D., our firearms instructor here, and a retired police officer out of New York who's been on the show many, many times. So I want to just start over. We're going to hit a couple of the high points that we missed on the show that didn't go out. Many of you heard it on radio, so I'm not going to try and cover the whole outline, but I want to make a couple of points for YouTube. One, that you can friend us on Facebook on the little sign on the front and send questions and comments to bob@firedupmail.com. Tony's been on several times, and I will avoid the introductions in length, but Tony works here and is a well-versed instructor in firearms. And this show is about guns, politics related thereto, which we're going to get into, and some self-defense issues. There's a couple of stories we ran that I want to reiterate over the show that disappeared. KSNB TV at Channel 3 in Las Vegas did a report this week. We had 2 home invasions back to back here in Las Vegas. The first one we were talking about, it's just before 5 a.m. on Wednesday, this will be a week ago today. A married couple, or a couple in the 2200 block of South Port Apache Road was awakened by what they described as violent sounds. The female half quickly called 911 to report someone was trying to break into their apartment. This comes from Lieutenant Dan McGrath with Metro Homicide. The male resident armed himself and went to investigate the pounding noise. He found someone was kicking and banging on the door, apparently trying to break in. The resident verbally warned the intruder several times to go away, that he was armed and so forth. That got no result. Then he fired a shot through the door. The intruder was not deterred by that, amazingly enough, continued to try and apparently break down the door. So the homeowner eventually fired at least one round that was fired through the door. There's some questionable reports as whether he fired several or one, but in any case, one of them shot the guy and he died on the outside of the door. The detectives were trying to determine if he was under the influence. Later reports determined he was inebriated. The coroner has now identified the guy as a 31-year-old from California. McGrath was quoted as saying, "We prefer people to call 911 and wait for the police." Obviously, if they're not in that position to do that and someone's breaking through their door, they have a right to defend themselves, which is, of course, correct. The lieutenant added they're not currently pursuing charges against the homeowner. The DA, of course, has the final review. It seems like a pretty reasonable shooting right until a round went through the door.
Right. I don't know if he should have waited till the door actually came down. Obviously, the verbal warnings didn't deter his action, but to shoot through a door at an unknown entity, whatever,
right.
You don't know if there was innocents in the area or by there. Obviously, the first rule when you take your hunting license says you never shoot at anything you can't identify. Sound shots are not allowed. And the same thing here. I mean, the guy was lucky. The intruder obviously going to be able to determine how many rounds were fired because there are bullet holes in the door. But he lucked out.
Yeah, he lucked out that no one else was harmed by the bullet. Exactly. And being as no one was, there are no criminal charges apparently going to be filed against the homeowner. But he's fortunate that, and we're still looking at the potential of a civil lawsuit when it turns out, and I believe there were some additional details that they've discovered since, Apparently this guy, the perp, was staying next door, got drunk,
Wrong house.
came to the wrong house, couldn't get in, didn't know he was at the wrong
And
house.
we hear that quite often too. If people get drunk, oh, it's frack homes all look the same, and you're
Right.
pounding on the wrong door. You didn't live there, and it's unfortunate. It was probably not, but they're going to be able to determine how much damage was actually done to the door to determine how, if this guy was really kicking a pounder or just aggressively knocking.
Yeah, and of course the issue is he's unarmed, he's at the wrong house. I don't want to second guess the homeowner. We're not there.
No.
We don't
No
know
circumstance.
what was behind the door. I mean, from the homeowner looking outward, if he's got an open field or a concrete wall or something where he knew the rounds wouldn't hit anybody other than the bad guy, and we don't know that. So it may have been very reasonable, but as McGrath said, the best situation is don't fire through the door.
Absolutely.
Call the police and hope they arrive before you need to fire when the guy actually breaches your house.
Right.
And they're still, when talking yesterday to Paula about this case, this guy is unarmed, and there could be a civil lawsuit over this because basically he shot an unarmed drunk. He didn't know that the drunk was being aggressive. It's going to be a touch and go case,
Right, I
but
agree.
it's could go either way depending on who's who and who's got the better lawyer. Please remember you can friend us on Facebook, and questions or comments to Tony or myself can be addressed to bob@fireupmail.com. Now we have a second home invasion, same day. This one took place at 11, Metro reports at approximately 11:16 a.m., not 11:15, but approximately, I love police reports. In this case, two juveniles actually did breach the house. They got the call originally, Metro did at 11:15, 11:16, 1400 block of Daybreak Road. Burglary call, again, Lieutenant McGrath said the man was upstairs sleeping when he heard a crash. He grabbed his handgun and fired several shots at an intruder by a window. The report wasn't clear. The intruder was inside the house by the window. He had already come through. That suspect was discovered bleeding and moaning in the backyard of an adjoining residence. Apparently, after he left the home through that same window, when he got shot, he jumped back out the window and ran, but he collapsed in the neighbor's yard. The homeowner saw another intruder coming up the stairs to the second floor, fired at him. That individual died at the scene. The suspect who fled through the door was taken to UMC for surgery. He's described in critical condition. I understand now he's going to make it. McGrath, again, said people have a right to defend themselves in their homes, but homicide has got to look at all the details of this case to make sure that everything is where it seems to be. Here we have the intruders were apparently armed. This is, and you could see them clearly, etc. People forcing their way through a window in your house.
Far better case than the previous one.
The guys coming through your window at 11 in the morning don't really have good intentions.
He's not collecting for the Red Cross.
There is, and this case brought up some of the emotional aftermath. We always talk to people if you can avoid taking a human life, you want to do that. And everybody suffers. Going back to the first case, if he could have not fired his gun, his life, that resident is going to be scarred for life by this incident. So is this guy. But there's always an emotional aftermath, and I've got to comment. The mother of the deceased teen, the one that was killed coming up the stairs, apologized to the homeowner through the press, through the media, and said, I know it's heavy on your heart. She recognizes that the death was a tragedy on all sides. It not only affects her for the loss of her son, but this guy is living the rest of his life second guessing himself. What could I have done different? Should I have backed up and bolted my bedroom door? People involved in these always do. And it's something that's really hard to live with. If you can avoid the shooting, try to avoid the shooting. You can't always, we've commented before the Supreme Court case years and years ago where there was a case of an attack, and the guy fired in self-defense. And it was brought up, well, he didn't have to fire and so forth. And one of the Supreme Court justices, the chief judge, commented in some legal journals that you could not negotiate with an upraised knife.
Mhm.
You know, there's no point if you cannot, if you're going to get killed, you can't talk to the guy. It's kind of like negotiating with ISIS at the moment, which we're going to talk about in a minute. The gun store, we do have concealed carry permit classes every Monday, every Wednesday, every Saturday. You can find the classes at thegunstorelasvegas.com and sign up online. Lots of people now because of the events in San Bernardino. In some other gun news that we ran, it's kind of important. President Obama, as you know, if you follow gun politics, is celebrating Christmas in Hawaii and is talking about, through advisors and leaks and so forth, about issuing some executive orders on gun control. CBS News says he has a team of White House lawyers who are out there looking for ways to do such things that could survive civil lawsuits and congressional scrutiny. On December 18th, the White House Communications Director, her name is Jen Psaki, said Obama's execution action on guns would come not in months, but in weeks. Various aides and leaks and so forth that indicated a few things that may be in this package of executive orders that are apparently coming down the pike when our commander-in-chief returns from his Hawaiian vacation. These are all based on leaks in the media and rumors, and I don't like to put anything on the air with these shows that I can't back up in black and white. This is just kind of a warning as what's out there. What is complicated is contemplated is a national ban on any magazine that holds 10 rounds or more, as they currently have in California, New York, and so forth. Obviously, will be a lot safer if the bad guys have two 10-shot magazines rather than one 15-shot standard magazine. Proposed is also a ban or registration, unclear, over anything they term as an assault weapon. There is lots of definitions of assault weapons.
The true definition of one is what they're calling, and what one really is totally different.
Yeah, well, an assault rifle in real gun talk is a selective fire, a full automatic gun. What they're calling assault weapons is a lot of other stuff.
Something that looks like it.
Yeah, and that looks the same, therefore it's evil. The registration of assault weapons, in my opinion, is a trap. Several places have had registration in the past, and then the next guy in office decides to pick them all up because he has a list of where they are. California is about to discover that through some Jerry Brown stuff that's coming down the pike as we speak. One of the scary things that's in this package is a copy by Social Security Administration of what the VA currently has as far as gun restrictions. And if you're not a veteran or don't know an aged veteran, they have a rule that they put in. This is not a law, it's a rule from the VA, that if you are on VA housing or VA assisted housing, they're paying your rent, whatever, sort of helping pay your rent. You would live in a VA home or VA subsidized apartment building, and have, in their opinion, admitted that you're incompetent, and you do that by having someone manage your financial affairs. When a aged veteran living in a government subsidized, VA subsidized housing asks the VA to provide someone to provide bookkeeping, basically, write checks for him, if he gets to pay the rent, this sort of thing. In the VA's opinion, he is self-admitting that he's incompetent to handle his own affairs. And in the VA's opinion, then he's not safe to have a firearm because he's admitting he's incompetent. This has been going on for a couple of years. If you don't know any veterans that are aged, ask. You will find lots of guys and ladies who don't have a gun in their apartment anymore because they're incompetent. I'm on Social Security. I'm not in Social Security housing, but I have someone do my financial affairs for me, like income tax and so forth. So I may end up in this. The VA is looking at using that self-admitted incompetence to also regulate guns held by Social Security recipients. You're too young to have to worry about this, Tony, but you know, we're
unfortunately he's wrong on that too. It's, you know, like if you have an accountant, like you said, do your income taxes. That gonna where are they going to draw the line on this?
Yeah, here they're talking about a guy
virtually not incompetent.
Can't remember to pay his rent on time. But yeah, where do we draw that line? How many things do you have to not be able to add and subtract before the government agency decides you're not competent to have a gun because you can't reason well? Social Security would affect obviously a lot more people than veterans do. When I brought this story up initially a couple of years or a year or so ago when Crescent Hardy, our congressman, was on, he was not aware of this at all. And what happened was we took a call in from a vet who was trying to explain to Congressman Hardy about why they just came and took his gun and he doesn't know what to do about it. And Crescent wasn't aware of it all. Most people aren't, unless you're familiar with an aged veteran. They'll tell you, ask one. If this adds to Social Security, we're talking about 4.1 million people or something that could fall under this.
Well, you know, Obama's a constitutional lawyer. I mean, so he obviously, well, that's true. I mean, he's smirking over here.
Well, yeah.
He's a constitutional lawyer.
He read a different one than I read. But,
yeah. He should be able to, I mean, I know he's going to try and work around a lot of this stuff, but a lot of this stuff is unenforceable, obviously. Well, all they're going to do is make bad people out of good people because they're not. A lot of people are not going to comply with this. I just got to, like New York right now with the AR-15s. You know, there are a very small quantity of them have been registered, and I just got a couple of pictures from a bunch of guys that I know at a rifle range in New York over the holidays, and it looked like Knob Creek. I mean, which is a big machine gun shoot, but I mean, there was all kinds of ARs, and I can just tell from the photo that I seen that they weren't compliant weapons. They didn't have, you know, they had flash fighters, they had this, they had that, all the evil things, you know, all the evil accoutrements.
And they're creating criminals when they say you have to register as they have in New York, and nobody's doing it. Then those people who didn't register have become criminals.
Exactly.
So now the guns are held by criminals. If you back up the law and change it, you make criminals out of people who weren't already. We're doing that in Los Angeles City now, where 10-shot magazines are illegal, 11-shot magazines are illegal. And all these people now are subject to arrest. And the state of Virginia is going through the same thing. If you have a permit in Virginia, or you have a permit that's honored by Virginia, it's probably not anymore. The governor and the attorney general have, by executive order, reduced the number of states whose permits they honor because the training isn't sufficient or whatever excuse it has. So if you have a permit that says it's good in Virginia and it's not from Virginia, it may not be. You need to check on that. Their concern is about states that don't require background checks to get a gun. They all do background checks for concealed carry permits. Sure. But anyway, this is different. And again, it's the battle between the Constitution and public safety concerns.
The compatibility states or the reciprocal agreement states, I mean, we know that from dealing here in school, in the class, that it changes like the law. It changes like the stock market. I mean, it has to be revised constantly because different states enact different laws. We'll recognize you, you won't recognize us. I mean, it's a back and forth thing. And I know Nevada, we're pretty strict on it because the training has to meet or exceed Nevada standards, and some states have laxed off on theirs, and some of them increased them. So it's a constant state of flux with a lot of these different states. So.
Yeah, when students ask us, you know, is my permit good in Delaware, and we have to look at them and say, "I'll look it up," because it changes basically
yes.
on a daily basis. If you're traveling out of the state you're a resident of and want to know, there are lists available. We've got them here of all the Attorney General's offices, and you can call and ask just before you travel. LA Times is reporting that in the wake of terrorist attacks in San Bernardino, they're considering toughening up local gun regulations. One of the requirements is the state of California, this is going to the governor's desk this week, would require insurance for gun owners. As you have car insurance in case you run over somebody, they're looking at requiring insurance to possess a gun. And you lucky folks in California that they already have a list of everybody who owns a gun. It'd be pretty easy to computerize those who have cars and insurance and whatever against, you know, who has what list. And perhaps if you don't buy a policy in the near future, you may...
This could come back and bite them because the NRA offers liability insurance right now if you're involved in a shooting. And I could see a potential large number of people joining the NRA to obtain the insurance, which would just counteract everything that they're trying to do here. And so, you know, shame on them, but it may be a membership increase for the NRA, you know, if they implement it. But again, it's something you're turning good people into bad people.
There's a few other stories we'll catch up on next week's show, which will be on Tuesday as normal, assuming this show is on the air, and I guess it is because my wife hasn't called yet to tell me it's not on the air. We all here will see you. We've got some upcoming gun shows. Crossroads of the West, March 5 and 6 at Cashman. Rocky Mountain is currently looking for another venue for their show. They'll probably be open sooner, but we don't know where yet. We will keep you up to date with that. We will be back next Wednesday with another show. I want to wish you all a very happy New Year and suggest that you might want to stay off the Strip. It's going to be a zoo.
And it's cold. It's actually really cold, and they're predicting, you know, very not pleasant temperatures out there.
Yeah, if you have a question or comment, I didn't turn the sign over. You can send a note to that address, bob@firedupmail.com, and we answer all the inquiries that come in, or have our specialist, whoever it happens to be. If you have a training question, might go to Tony, or a gunsmith question, or for one of our attorneys. We will have them answer that and get you the right information at the right time. Please don't ask your next door neighbor who used to own a gun what the law is. There are places to find it out. I wish you all a happy New Year. Tony, happy New Year. Thanks for sitting in on short notice when we lost our show. And we'll be back next week with a full-length show. Do have a safe, happy New Year. Thanks for watching. We'll be back.